Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh, you're older than me.
82 and you're 85.
You both look kind of young.
That's what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, no, it's true. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
You wouldn't say you sure look your age.
It's amazing that the women's spirituality group I belong to has a lot of 80-year-olds in there, and you never would guess that they're 80. I'm going to be 70 in July, so they call me the baby. But I'm learning so much from these women, you know, their life experiences they've had.
Fortunate to have them.
Oh, very fortunate, yes.
Fortunate to have them.
Well, thank you.
Are you gentlemen uncomfortable with us not wearing masks? Are you gentlemen uncomfortable with us not wearing masks?
No.
Because we have some out in the park, if you feel uncomfortable.
But I'm tired. So, once the church said they're optional, then that's good enough for me. But I would be happy to get them and put them on if it's making you gentlemen uncomfortable. What? Yes, that's right.
His hair was really Jesse's name is yes, Thomas Owen. His hair was yeah, there it is. You got the light. She was, what did she tell me that she was appointed to be a transition worker in the search for the new bishop. Jessie was. I think she's going places. We're very close to these two. There you can see the light. A tractor on his t-shirt. Oh, you sit up there, yeah. This would be an opportunity. Just wanted to join it. There are only reasons they're passionate. Because I know the last time Crystal was asked about why they say trying to keep it small.
Keep it small because of the pandemic.
I wonder what it'll be like if the locals know being priests.
Good morning. Good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm delighted to welcome and say some introductory words for our guests here. We are still anticipating one more guest joining us, but we are going to go ahead and get started. So today, our forum, we are taking some time, we're breaking up our Handel's Messiah Lenten series today to welcome our guests from the Diocese of Belize. This is our companion diocese. This is a relationship that's been formed, which we'll get more background on from Margaret, hopefully, about how long we've had this companionship. But this is an effort to build relationship across the Anglican Communion. And for some years now, Jeannie has wanted to forge relationships between parishes as well. And so we were so glad to be asked to host our guests from Belize today, and thank you for being here. So by word of introduction, I said a little bit at the service. The Reverend Margaret Denieri is known to some of us. She is, yes, she's here. She is the canon for mission. Yes, Nancy, you know her. I know her too. She is a wonderful colleague in our own diocese and canon for mission here. So one of her roles is to help foster this companion relationship that we have. And those of you who have been to the 9 a.m. have already gotten to be blessed by a word from Reverend Elizabeth Tulloch. She is our guest. She is chair of the Companion Relations Development Committee for the Diocese of Belize. In other words, she is here to help foster this relationship between our diocese and theirs. And she wears other hats as well, not just in the diocesan role, but serving as priest and pastor to many of the congregations in Belize herself. So we'll hear more about that. But before we begin, and I'll say one more word. We are expecting Mr. Jeffrey Locke. He is the interim diocesan secretary for the Diocese of Belize, and we hope to be joined by him shortly. But if not, we'll still have a great conversation between Margaret and Elizabeth. And before we begin that, we have a special, it clicked off for a moment, but we'll get that ready. We have a word from Bishop Philip Wright of the Diocese of Belize, who has recorded an Episcopal message for us to share words of greeting. So we'll play that first, and then we'll get started with our conversation. Thank you all for being here.
Are you going to introduce your friend who got
And here's Abe, who will not be taking a speaking role in today's forum.
for Abe?
What did you say, Papa?
Yeah.
He's all of our fathers.
Good.
I bring you warm greetings this Lenten season. We continue to lift up in prayer Bishop Mark and the faithful of the Diocese of Ohio. Together we give God thanks for the partnership in mission and ministry we have enjoyed these many years. We look forward to more years of collaborative effort as we labor for the extension of God's kingdom, as we continue to embrace the Great Commission to proclaim the good news of the kingdom, to teach, baptize, and nurture new converts, to respond to human need by loving service, to transform unjust structures of society, to challenge violence of every kind, and pursue peace and reconciliation, to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. Thanks for your hospitality and love in receiving Reverend Elizabeth and Jeffrey as guests of the diocese. I pray for productive meetings and the further strengthening of the bonds of friendship and companionship over the next few days. May God continue to bless all that we do in God's name, to God's honor and glory, and in the service of God's people. Amen.
So while we're doing a little furniture arranging, for those of you who've not met me, as Jesse said, my name is Margaret Denieri, and I am the canon from Mission in the Diocese of Ohio. I'll say a little more about that, but I would be remiss if I didn't also tell you, for those who don't know, that I am half-time in that role and half-time at St. Luke's in Cleveland. And no, I want to clap for you because I know how much you support the work we do with volunteers and your donations and gatherings of things. So I just want to say thanks while I'm here and I got the mic. So, welcome. I'm going to say a few words about companion relationships, and then as soon as we can all sit up here, which is sort of now, I'll moderate a conversation between us. Jeffrey is on his way, as best we know, somewhere in Uberland, between downtown Cleveland and here, so hopefully he'll get here shortly. Companion relationships are just what they sound like, although they take many different forms. We actually have two, one with the Diocese of Belize, which obviously we're going to focus on today, but one also with the Diocese of Tonga in Tanzania. If you have questions about that, come find me and we can talk about it. But the relationship with the Diocese of Belize has been particularly fruitful, I would say. And I'll just give a short sort of history, and then Elizabeth's going to correct me because she knows more than I do. We've been doing this for about somewhere between 10 and 12 years. It started with an effort to teach the teacher training in Belize around science and around how to do reading camp. And then it has morphed into some other initiatives, which include sending seminarians down there for a few weeks over the summer, and then COVID, right? Every sentence we have says, and then COVID. And we are hoping to restart that. We took a youth pilgrimage in 2018, so took a bunch of young people down there. Lauren Dockery was one of the people who went, so if you have questions about that, you can talk to Lauren more. But really with the intention of having it be pilgrimage, not tourism, and pilgrimage, not sort of only a picture-taking opportunity. So that's what I'm going to say about the relationship so far. Elizabeth, why don't you and I take our chairs and I can switch mics, maybe? Or I can sit here. Or I can get caught in the mic cord.
Exactly. They're all working. Are they all working? Yeah. Okay. Well, and one of the other things we've done too is we've exchanged youths. We focus a lot on youth and ministry for now, and I think outreach is going to start being a focus, and we're trying to work on parish-to-parish links to get it more on the ground, than the high-level ministries that we do. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, but why don't you just say a little more about the Church of Belize and what it looks like?
Sure.
Say something about life in Belize for those who don't know.
Oh my gosh, well, first of all, you're probably wondering how a Texas girl got to Belize. But we've been there for about 35 years with a little stint that I came back for about 10 years to sort of shore up the nest egg and go to seminary when I still wasn't sure what God was calling me to. I thought, oh, I just need to learn a little more about the Bible, and then of course, you know, following the breadcrumbs, here I am. Life in Belize is wonderful. Our church is wonderful. The Diocese of Belize is actually established by regulation. We were, of course, the old Church of England. We have been present in Belize for over 200 years. We have the oldest cathedral in Central America, and it is the only cathedral outside of Westminster that has seen a coronation, which is the crowning of the Mosquito Kings. It is a beautiful cathedral. It's an old cathedral. It was built out of the bricks brought over on slave ships. So I hope you get an opportunity to come and be at our cathedral in Belize City. We have, it's not so, Belize itself has about 400,000 people, give or take. A lot of migration has occurred in recent years from El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras, mostly Salvador with a lot of the violence. So we have a lot of immigration or migrant villages that have been set up and welcomed by the government of Belize. In the Diocese of Belize, we have 8 parish churches, and parishes for us are not only the buildings, but it's the old Church of England concept of parishes, like areas, right? So that we cover the whole country of Belize through those 8 parishes, and then there are missions that usually fall under the parishes, and I believe the last count was about 22 missions. What I love about Belize is God is still relevant. Not a meeting in government starts without a prayer. Not a meeting anywhere starts without a prayer. And God is still relevant. And that makes it really wonderful. So the Anglican Diocese of Belize, because our bishop, Bishop Philip, is the Lord Bishop of the entire nation of Belize by law. Well, it's really it is because we're established by law. No other bishop, Catholic, Methodist, any other bishop or any other church leader can be called that. So he takes care of the whole country. We are part of how the church is still relevant in Belize is we actually have a senatorial representative, the churches do, in Congress. So it's a little bit like still that sort of Church of England kind of feel. Belize gained its independence in 1981, but it is still part of the Commonwealth, very much part of the Commonwealth. English is our national language, which makes it a very easy transition for visitors from the U.S. to come. And here we are in Latin America, as Jeffrey says, and I don't know where he is, he'll be here, but we're in the middle of Latin America, and we're the only English-speaking country. So it does make the relationship that much more, that easier. What else are you thinking about that I need to? Schools, oh yes. Schools. All of our parishes and most of our missions have schools. We still have parochial schools, Anglican schools. And they're mostly primary schools, but primary for us is like kindergarten through junior high or middle school. So kindergarten through 8th grade. And then there are high schools. We, the Anglican Diocese, have 1 high school. We're probably looking at building a 2nd, but by regulation, the children only are required to go to school until they are, I think it's an age-related, like 15 or 16, but most of them don't go past 8th grade. Although that is changing, and more are going to high school at least. So we have our primary schools. For me personally, I am responsible for the western part of Belize. The capital city church parish, St. Anne's, is our biggest parish out there. There are 2 parishes and 6 missions and what we call the settled congregation, which is like a house church. And then we have 5 schools out there. So I'm responsible kind of for that area. We have, how many schools did Jeffrey say? I keep losing track of missions and schools that we have. Maybe it was 20,
22 maybe?
maybe it's 22 schools and something like 30 churches. Yeah, I think it's something like that. And I'm sorry, because we're in the process of reviewing some of our mission churches, because like most dioceses, the population moves around, so some of our mission churches need to be closed, and we need to open new ones. So there's this whole process going on, so I've lost count, I hate to say. I just know what's in my area. 9 missions, or 8 churches and a settled congregation and 5 schools. So yes, we have, our schools are wonderful. We have, we've been struggling with COVID like everyone, but they are back face to face now for the first time in a long time. Because of our medical facilities, our government has been very strict. Mask wearing is still required anywhere you go in Belize for the moment, although they are supposed to let up on those regulations toward the end of March, I understand, because praise God, our cases are down to a handful in the country. Let's see, and so the schools have just come back face to face within the last 2 months. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So one of the things I'll just say about the country of Belize, so if you heard Elizabeth's number, 400,000, so the population of Belize is roughly the population of Cleveland proper, the city of Cleveland, just to give you some context. But one of the things I learned when I was down there is that I'm going to say 35%, it's some number like that, of the country is set aside, land is set aside as preserved, as nature preserve. So one of the real values they hold is the value of the natural world. And that was one of the great gifts of my time down there. I mean, think about that, 35% of the land set aside. So a couple of our priorities, as we've been thinking, as Elizabeth said, are continuing to do youth and youth development. We had some Belizeans up to summer camp 3 years ago, and we're hoping we'll get some Belizeans and maybe even a counselor or 2. So that's one of the ways that we can work back and forth, along with some of these internships for seminarians. But I do want to talk a little bit about the parish-to-parish thing. How's that? Parish-to-parish relationships. We've been talking about this for a long time and trying to figure out how to pair parishes and what that would look like in a way that doesn't mean that, people have to travel from one place to the other. And so we're starting to think about some of those things. Susan Quill, your esteemed chair of the Episcopal Church Women, is interested in that work and thinking about particularly pairing with schools, perhaps, so we're just starting to talk about that, but also to talk about how we connect parishes in ways that are meaningful and relationship building, because that's the real key to companion relationships. It's easy for us to do Western, wealthy, white people help poor, brown, Central American people, and that is not what we're about. So if you're looking for that, sorry. If you're looking for that, you're in the wrong place. I'll put it that way. Okay, that's a nice way, because I'm in church. But relationship building, as you all know, takes a lot of work, because we don't have all the same cultural values. We don't get to impose ours on anybody else. We get to understand them and learn about them. And so that's really the interest on the parish-to-parish work. And as I said, as Jesse said, it's something Jeannie and I have been talking about for a long time, so we are hoping to really get that off the ground, probably with a couple of pilots, and then figure out what works and what doesn't. So I would just say, if you have some interest in that, to either talk to me or be in touch with your clergy, and they know how to find me.
And I was just going to say, one of the beautiful things that has come out of COVID for us in Central America, for us in Belize, is it has forced us into technology. It forced us more into technology than, and you know, you go down, you're going to see young kids all on their phones. It's the same as here. Everybody's on the phone. Us older folks too, on their phones, and we rely a lot on technology. Now there are some areas that cannot get internet, right? And there are some people that cannot afford devices for their children to do online school when we were doing online school. But the beautiful thing about the technology is you don't necessarily have to be present there to form the relationship or to talk about the relationship or to even start the relationship. We've got Zoom, we've got Messenger, we do WhatsApp. I mean, there are ways now that we can talk and get introduced, and we don't have to wait for a group to come down. And so if St. Paul's, if anyone is interested, I think it would be a great opportunity, because we are also at the heels of looking at which of our parishes are willing and have the capacity. We really want to establish long-term relationships among parishes, and it doesn't mean that would be the only parish, right? Maybe it starts there, maybe there's some ministry that develops that could then be shared with a neighboring parish or some of the missions, and so you never know what God has in mind and the Holy Spirit has in mind. But we are grateful for the opportunity to be here and even be able to talk to you about Belize and our relationship. We have enjoyed a very strong diocesan relationship, and we've taken advantage together of the diocesan offerings, Bellwether Farm, our beautiful jewel, we call it the jewel in Belize, our beautiful country, and the conservation that the government has done, because it does provide opportunities for youth in the year of creation, for youth to really understand creation and be out in the jungle and see toucans, and I don't know what else you saw down there. Y'all went to visit a Mayan ruin, and it was a wonderful pilgrimage, and we're planning another one too, so that would be great.
I had a thought, is it going to come back? Okay, well, we'll see. The other thing I wanted to say is that part of the work over these past few days has been really, the sort of visual we're using is something like a woven rug or a tapestry, so that there are lots of threads of connection. It's not just dependent on me and Lisbeth. And so talking to the ECW about how they might be connected. Obviously, our bishops have quite a strong relationship. That will change in a year or so. We'll just see how that goes. So I just want to sort of emphasize that. I know what I was going to say. Because of the technology piece, you can now join worship from Belize. And that's a simple thing to do. Beth, Frank, and I participated in the renewal of ordination vows last year via Facebook Live in Belize. And so there are offerings. Go to the Diocese of Belize website. You'll find all those links. But they're doing compline, they're doing evening prayer every week, and there's a diocesan worship service every week, right?
Right. It comes on every Sunday, and you can see it on YouTube or the Anglican Diocese of Belize is what it's called, Facebook page. And it's kind of neat because we are connected with Love TV, which is the largest television station in Belize, because we have a lot of Belizeans living in the U.S. We call it our diaspora. We estimate, and it's an estimation, that every Sunday our church service reaches about 100,000 people. And so our bishop is very, very pro online ministry. Let us reach the people. And these are people that, if they don't have anything else, they're going to have a television in their house. I mean, that's the culture, right? And so we reach people of all denominations because Love has agreed to carry the service at 8 a.m. as a donation to the church. And so it's either our bishop leading or what we've been doing now is going around to the larger congregations. And I've led a few services, and some of our other priests have led services, so that people get a sense of what's in Belize and what's close to them. Maybe they didn't know that there was a mission church next door, because sometimes communication is, slow, going upriver in a canoe kind of thing. So if you can join in that service, it's beautiful. Today was St. Joseph's in Punta Gorda, which is our smallest, and it's the most southern mission that we have, because St. Joseph's Patronal Day was yesterday, so they did it from St. Joseph's today. And so you can see some of our little churches, and they're just very cozy, and they're very old. As I said, our cathedral's 200 and I've lost count. So 2012, what are we, 209 years old. Our next oldest church is like St. Peter's in Orange Walk, which is also called Sugar City, because that's where all of our sugar cane is from. And it was very wealthy at one time. It's like everything else has kind of gone away. But it's got a little church called St. Peter's that's been there something like 198 years. It's a wonderful country. I hope you will come down and see. There's plenty of things to do. There's plenty of mission work to do, where we can care. You can work together alongside some of our people, and let's see what God has in mind. It's really exciting.
Two of the things that we have in common with the Diocese of Belize are a shortage of clergy, although I know that's not an issue here. Across the church, that is a real issue in this country, and it is the case in Belize as well. And another thing is the increasing presence of Spanish speakers, people from Latino cultures, from Mexico down to, as Lizzie said earlier, down to the triangle of El Salvador and Honduras and Guatemala. And again, just like us, as an English-speaking church, to have bilingual clergy would be a huge thing. And so that's something that they're working on as well. And I know we are also, but you all know that Americans are the people who are least likely to actually speak a second language. So we're wrestling with that alongside the people in Belize. And so that's one of the areas where, at a somewhat higher level, we might be able to sort of think about how to strategize around that and do some work together. So.
And I always thought a good thing to do if people are down to work with us to spread the gospel would be to have a little culture tour, because one of the things about Belize is, and I think Jeffrey said this the other day, we are a melting pot. We have it's a Garangu, G-A-R-I-N-G-U, I can never say it, but the Garifuna people who were slaves mixed with the Arawak Indians, is what he said. I think I didn't realize that was part of the history. But they have their own culture, their own language, their own singing the Lord's Prayer. I wish I would have brought it in Garifun. It's a wonderful experience. And then we have Creole, of course, and that's what I said this morning. Good morning. That's Creole, right? And what is it Jeffrey saying? All the one? All the we are one, which means we are all one. We are all one people. And that is sort of the culture of Belize, is that we're all one. We were talking the other day about how, you can go walk into the Prime Minister's office almost, but it's not we're all in this together, and that's the culture that we would like to establish. I think with the Diocese of Ohio, and what we have established is we are all in this together. We are all one. We are all Christians. We are all here to spread the gospel. They call us Anglicans in Belize. That's not, it's just because we're part of the Anglican communion. It's not part of the ACNA. We're more like Episcopalians, right? So we are kind of moderate. We are not not like West Africa, you know, we're not conservative, we're not like completely progressive, we're kind of in the middle. But we call it, we're the Anglican Church, but it is not like I just wanted to clarify that because I've had that question. It's not like the ACNA here, we're the Episcopal Church in Belize.
So what I might actually do is say, we can add some more things as we think about them. But would love to answer your questions about Belize, about companion relationships,
About possibilities, about what you're thinking.
about possibilities. Yeah, Bill.
The global and domestic mission of the Diocese of Ohio funded a project under Matthew Tier. Under Matthew Tier.
Still
An
going.
important part of any type of mission work is sustainability.
Absolutely.
So my question is, how has that project developed since we no longer have the funding through the global domestic mission? How has it expanded in terms of science education within Belize and particularly the rural areas?
Sure. So my job is to repeat the question so everybody else can hear it. So I'm going to summarize this, Bill. Bill was asking about the Science Success Program that was initially funded by our Diocesan Commission on Global and Domestic Mission and has now sort of been turned over to Belize. So he was asking how that program is going at this point.
Sure. So I had talked to actually our general manager of schools because I was curious too. I do know that they had pre-COVID, everything is pre-COVID, so let's talk pre-COVID, right? Because we're picking up the threads from that. But pre-COVID, they had their own Science Success Project. One of them for 2 years. One was at one of the schools, St. Agnes, in Mahogany Heights, which is a very rural area and a very poor area. And that continued, so they had the science camp, but you know, it's teaching the teachers, right? So there was a part of that, teaching the teachers, and then they have a science camp for kids for a week. And then they did it the next year, this was after Matthew had left, the next year at St. Matthew's in Pomona, which is more south, heading south, and that was very successful. I'm trying to remember the numbers, but I want to say at the science camp, they had something like 150 kids. You know, it was like great. And the teachers are teaching what they've learned. The science scores have gone up. And my understanding is the plan post-COVID is to pick up the threads and continue teaching the teachers that haven't, you know, because there's new teachers coming in all the time on how to teach science and to continue the science camps. All I'm saying is it's sustainable. It was one of the better projects I think we've done, or we've partnered with somebody, and it is still ongoing, and it has made a difference in this. They did some testing and some work, and they have actual numbers, which I don't have, but you know, with me. But they have it actually increased the science level of our children. So thank you all very much. It was a very important program.
So my question, a follow-up question is, are there methods or things that we either as a parish or as a diocese can do to continue to sustain that program because of its great success?
So Bill's question is, are there things to do that continue to sustain that program? I'm going to say the short answer is probably we need to wait and see a little bit. But
Well, and this is why I wish Mr. Locke was here. I'm kind of worried that he's not here, but he is the president of the Diocesan Education Board by virtue of his role as the diocesan secretary and our general manager. In other words, I would say the short answer is yes, but I'm not sure how, because I think we need to go back and visit with them on what they need to make it work, you know, continue and to pick up the thread. So thank you for asking that question, and we will find an answer out for you. Yep.
Nancy?
I needed to explain, number one, thank you both for being here. And I needed to explain to everybody here why St. Paul's doesn't know a lot about Belize, other than Bill, because he served on that diocesan committee. However, I needed to explain to you all and to the people that are in this audience that because of the long-term relationship between Belize and the Diocese of Ohio, people here might say, how come we didn't know anything about this? I needed to explain that at the time this was first established, our rector at that time felt that the Global Action Committee here at St. Paul's had enough on its plate, and that maybe this relationship could be better developed by smaller congregations coming together and working together with the Diocese of Belize. Therefore, we here at St. Paul's don't know, other than our former rector explained to the Global Mission Action Group that there was such a relationship, companion diocesan relationship starting, but that he felt that we just had too much. And since then, I know they have tried to find a leader within St. Paul's, and maybe there's somebody in this room that would step up and take the leadership of that companion relationship. But that is why you all are being here is wonderful, because outside of a few of us who are old enough to remember when that companion relationship was first begun, a lot of the people here at St. Paul's do not know anything about the companion relationships.
So what I would say, Nancy, are two things. Nancy was talking about sort of some history around the work that you've done here and why people don't know more about this relationship. So I would say two things. One is, that's why we're here. Number two is, if you don't all get church life, you need to, and you especially need to, even if it's not about Belize. We are, after all, electing, I don't know, somebody, like a new bishop. So if you're not getting church life, you need to be getting church life, and if you don't know how to do that, I'm sure somebody here can help you with that. But whenever we're doing projects in Belize, we are putting articles in Church Life, so that's one way to stay abreast of it. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you for saying that, and I hope that our conversation is putting faces to the ministry, because I do think if St. Paul's decides they want to do some kind of parish link, we already have in mind some things that could happen. And I see, of course, I'm not a minister here, I'm not a pastor here, but I see churches like St. Paul's, and I see this in Belize too, I have these visions that the larger congregations that have the means and have the relationships, and maybe there are smaller congregations that don't have the means but have the willingness, they don't have the capacity to have the willingness. I can see bringing them along, helping them, like have them come with you, maybe they have a youth group that has 5 youth in it, but the youth want to do something, but the church doesn't have the means to help them do. There's so many things that the larger congregations can do to support the smaller ones. That's just my personal view. That is not committing St. Paul's to anything. But we would love to have St. Paul's, and we have so many things in mind in so many ways that and this is to answer, and kind of go in line with what Margaret was saying, you know, toxic charity is not what we're about. We're not come down and give us money and do all this. It is truly, how can we partner together to spread the gospel and help the people? You know, that's it.
Yeah, and learn from each other, which is implicit in what
Yeah,
was
we learn
said.
from each other. It doesn't mean we can't, have a good time while we're doing it.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Oh, hi, Michael. My wife and I had the pleasure of going out to Belize for our honeymoon 10 years ago. We were blown away by the beauty of the country, the beauty of the people, and we have got a young daughter who in a couple of years will be 18, help me. And we'd love to hear involved in mission work. And I was just wondering if you had ideas from like a more personal standpoint. If we were to go down, whether that's combining with other people, or even like the opportunity that if we were to go to the country and combine or try to accomplish something, even as individuals, just looking for ideas.
So I'm going to say one thing before Elizabeth goes, which is we can come up with ideas. We can do that on a flip chart in 10 minutes. What we're really encouraging people to do before they do that is to think about why you want to. You know, this is a spiritual formation opportunity, a theological reflection opportunity. We were talking the other day about what if everybody who came down and did mission work in Belize was told that they could not take any pictures? And the reason we say that is, right, people love to have pictures of what they've done, the school they've painted, whatever. So what I would suggest is we can come up with some ideas, but I would really invite you to do that thinking in concert with some of your colleagues here. How do I think about that project? And then say, what would you like us to do? And we'll be all over that. Is that fair?
No, I think that's the best way to do it, because we do, we have a flip chart of things we can do, but why do you want to do it? And what is your intention for coming down? And I think that if we had more people doing that, it would be a more spiritual experience for groups that come down. And I will share this story because it will get my blood boiling again. But I had a man call me, he wasn't an Anglican, but he somehow got to me, my number, and called me and said, my family is coming down and I'm bringing my children and we're coming down for a trip and we'll be in Placencia. Could we go visit the school so I can show my children what it looks like and how the other half lives? I didn't give him a nice answer back. I tell you, it probably wasn't very pastoral, but I basically said to him, we're not Department of Tourism, and no, you can't, and I hope you have a good trip, but we are just like you. So no, it was, and a lot of people, I'm not saying churches, but I'm saying a lot of people, a lot of groups come down with that, oh, we're going to save you. It's like, well, no, how can we save you? What can we do together to save the people? And that's sort of the mindset I'm hoping that I think mostly because of the Diocese of Ohio's, I know Reverend Beth Frank and with Margaret, we always have that as the underscore. It's like no toxic charity. We are in this together. We are all one. We are in this together to spread the gospel. I think there's a lot of good work we can do. As I said, we have ideas from our end, but we'd want to hear from you, what you do. And truthfully, just on the practical level, a lot of what could be done on that flip chart depends on the makeup of the group. If you're dealing with older people, you might do one thing. If you're dealing with younger people, you might do something else. But we hope to have opportunities for young people all over the diocese to do like a youth pilgrimage coming down there, or for our youth to come up here and be counselors at the youth camp. I think there's lots of outlets for what we want to do. But as Margaret, and I agree with her, is why do you want to do it, and how can we work together to spread the gospel in Ohio and in Belize? And I'm gonna get Jeffrey. Something has happened. I gotta find out.
I think we just miscommunicated.
I
he's
think
gonna
we
be here around the
miscommunicated. I think
church.
he's gonna come at the 11 thinking that we're gonna have a forum after the 12, after the 11. I do. I think we miscommunicated. He's gonna be mortified.
Other questions? We've got a few more minutes. It's 10:57, so we've got 3 more minutes. All right, Bill, if nobody else, but if anybody else has one, you get to go before Bill's second one. Okay.
I just wanted to say that I think we should spend a moment thinking about the people who have been the drivers before. I mentioned Matthew Cheer, who the science program, David Simpson, who first
Yes.
initiated it, and then unfortunately Beth Frank, who many of
Big
us
friend.
knew
Bless her, may she
involved
rest in
and
peace.
recently
Yep.
died. So remember, those were important drivers in terms of making the program work in terms of the relationship, and we need to think about how do we put some more people to help sustain the project.
And with the passion, absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things that Margaret was saying, is it doesn't need to be me and Margaret, right? Ultimately, it's our 2 bishops who, by the way, adore each other. But it doesn't need to be just me and Margaret. There needs to be so if something happens to us, it gets sustained. You want it to continue. The relationship is a whole relationship, not just 2 people. Yeah.
So yeah, hold in mind, if nothing else, that sort of metaphor of a tapestry or a weaving, because that really is how we're thinking about this. And yeah, I mean, it is a testament to the fact that Matt and David did the work they did, and Matt's gone to Florida, and David is I don't know where, and the work continues.